once again, Bill, we are welcoming in a special guest this week as we have the countdown has now reached 28 weeks until week 0. Welcoming in Steve Sipple, the columnist for the HuskersOnline on the On3 network, one of the best information centers for Nebraska football. Steve has covered Nebraska football for more than a quarter century. Steve, thanks for making some time for us today.
Glad to do it. I was glad to see both of you guys. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Bill Bender suggested you as our first guest. I'll turn it over to him.
Yeah, Steve's a great friend. You know, I've had the chance to get to know him through the Big 10 years on his radio show every once in a while. He does a great job. He's, to me, the best source for Nebraska football. So that's who I go to when I need something. So, Steve, I'm just going to cut right to it. I read your column about Matt Rhule and Tom Osborne, and I know you know this as anybody that's been around the program. How does Matt Rhule advance the program while paying homage to that past that we always talk about from Tom Osborne, that impossible standard that you were covering in the 1990s? So far, so good, right?
Yeah, I just think it's a matter of being genuine. And guys, Matt Rhule's 48 years old, so he understands what Osborne did here. He's not, he's still pretty young, but he does remember that era. Osborne won his first national title in 1994, then won subsequent national titles in 1995 and 1997. So there's a reverence that's very genuine that Rhule has. You can hear it. I mean, it's not phony at all. And I don't. Hey, Bill. Right now, I don't know. Rhule's 2 months on the job. I mean, he's got to advance the program. You're right. I just don't. Right now, I don't know how much he worries about that. I think it's just been sort of spontaneous. His interactions with Osborne. They met at an Outland dinner in Omaha, sat together, talked for an hour, and Rhule was genuinely captivated. So I think it's been pretty spontaneous so far.
So I was looking at Matt Rhule's resume, and of course he's got a reputation for being a big turnaround guy, especially at the college level. But it was interesting to me. It doesn't happen right away. Year 1 at Temple, he took over a team that was 4-7. They actually went 2-10 his first year before the big turnaround. Year 1 at Baylor, took over a team that was 7-6, and they actually went 1-11 in year 1. And then, of course, got him to the Sugar Bowl a few years later, had a great turnaround. Year 1 with the Panthers, took over a team that was 5-11. They stayed at 5-11 in year 1. So he's got the track record for the turnarounds, but not necessarily right out of the gate. The Nebraska fans going to be patient?
What do you think? I'll tell you what, Bill, you hit a hot button topic here. That topic's a hot button one. I have said that I don't believe there's any reason they have to get off to that sort of 2-10 and 3-9 type start with the returning talent. Now it's hot button though. When you say that, people automatically think, oh, there's Sipple applying pressure to the head coach. No, it's not that at all. Or there's Sipple kind of defending Scott Frost and what he left. No, not that. I mean, that's people. There's a genuine disdain for Frost around here right now. It's not that at all. All it is a respect for the returning talent. They have 10 guys returning on defense that have started. Actually, 11 who have started games. There's one who started one. The rest have started multiple. 10 guys back on defense who have started multiple games. It wasn't a bad defense. Not for the final 8 games. It was an okay defense. Not great, but okay. They have a starting quarterback back. They have a starting running back back. They have 6 offensive linemen with starting experience back. It's not a team that you look at and say, oh, God, it's a debacle. Now, some people will try to sell it to you that way. I just don't buy it. Right. So, I mean, the last game of the year was a win at Iowa, which Iowa was playing for the division title, and Nebraska beat them on their home field. I mean, hey, Bill, believe me, you'll get reaction on that question.
Yeah. Hey, Steve, obviously you and I have talked about this, and since Nebraska has come in to the Big Ten and establishing their identity, and I was just curious, we've talked about this a little bit, how much do Nebraska, or how much do you measure this program up against Ohio State and Michigan versus Wisconsin and Iowa? What should Nebraska strive to be? Or even I could extend that to the new Big Ten.
Yeah.
When UCLA and USC come in, where does Nebraska fit in as a program with Matt Rhule among all those programs?
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion about that. I mean, there's the thing that makes sense. The scenario that makes sense, I think, to Nebraska fans is, all right, win the West Division first and then worry about the big boys. I have always said you always have to keep Ohio State. If you're Nebraska, you always have to keep Ohio State in your sights. That's what you're ultimately chasing. And Michigan. I mean, you have to say Michigan now. So I've always said that. And again, another hot button topic around here. Other people say, no, it's got to be a step by step. You got to win your division first and then worry about that. I just think that's, I don't know. You're settling a little bit there. I mean, what do you want to be? You want to win the Big Ten. It's not about winning the West. It's about, I never call it a division title. You win first place in your division. It's not you don't get anything for it. You want to win. You want to win a Big Ten title. So right. Depends who you ask, Billy.
Well, when you went to Columbus, was it eye-opening for you among being around that fan base and that expectation and that organization around that program? Is that something Nebraska can strive to be? Do you think they can get in that zip code with Ohio State and Michigan?
Yeah, I'm old now. I'm 56. And was it eye-opening for me to go to Ohio State? No, it wasn't eye-opening. I've seen it at Nebraska. I mean, I covered Nebraska when they were winning national titles. It looked like Ohio State. Talent was probably maybe in some cases better than Ohio State's been. Think about it. I mean, think about it. The team that beat Florida in the Fiesta Bowl with Tommy Frazier and Lawrence Phillips had 18 guys on defense that played in the NFL. I mean, 18 in 1 year. I mean, I've seen it, Bill. But Nebraska's now a long way away, long way. And what people wonder around here, if they could ever get back to that. I think they can, but I don't know. A lot's going to have to fall into place.
You talked about two hot button topics. How about a third hot button topic, potentially quarterback?
Yeah, you've hit him, Bill. My
Jeff
God,
Sims coming in from Georgia Tech. Yeah. I'm here in Atlanta. I went to a few Jeff Collins practices this year. Went to a couple games. I like him. I didn't think he had a lot of help. Had Jahmyr Gibbs stuck around one more year at Georgia Tech, that certainly would have helped Jeff and that offense in general. He did not have a great offensive line here, but it seems like Matt Rhule really likes him. Casey Thompson, of course, coming back. You mentioned as a returning starter. I think he's 24 years old at this point. That could be a hot button topic in the spring, yes?
Oh, God. Yeah, you guys have done your research, which I really appreciate. Yes. Definitely a hot button topic. Casey Thompson was the starter last year, started 10 games. He wasn't the problem. When he went out, it was a bit, I don't know if you saw the Michigan game when they just didn't have anything behind him. Casey hung in there, played well, but there's a big problem. Casey had shoulder surgery recently and won't be available in the spring. Okay. Which means Jeff Sims, to whom you alluded, can get a big leg up. Now, none of this is a surprise to Casey. I've talked to his dad, Charles, who was a great option quarterback at Oklahoma. And they knew Nebraska was going into the portal, and their posture is bring it on. But it's going to have to wait. So their plan is for Casey to rehab the shoulder, get better in the spring. He might be able to throw a little bit, probably won't practice, but then, in May and June, then he'll hope to find some rhythm. And you know how it is now. June doesn't really shut down in programs. It's not like, there's not coaching per se, but there's organized activities with the players. Casey hopes to get some momentum there, take that June and July momentum into preseason camp, and then take back that job. I've been that voice that says you can't. Casey did too much for this program just to elevate a kid from Georgia Tech ahead of him. But Bill, people are doing that here.
And there's a relationship, I guess, between Jeff Collins and Matt Rhule, right? And so I think Rhule knows what he's getting, more so than maybe just a little bit more of an unknown transfer or whatever. So that could help Sims.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, it's been interesting, guys. When you listen to Matt Rhule talk, he's very effusive in his praise of Sims, not so much Casey. Now it might just be familiarity, He is very familiar with Sims. He regards him as a potential NFL quarterback. Sims is very provocative because he's 6'4", 220, can run, has a good arm. Actually, you've seen it, Bill. He throws it downfield well. So I get it. He's a very provocative quarterback because of his size, speed, and arm.
Well, so here's a good one for you. Which game would register more if Matt Rhule won it in September? They go to Colorado versus Coach Prime, and that guy's getting a little bit of attention, Steve, down there in Boulder, old Nebraska. Which one would register more in Lincoln, if they beat Colorado or if Michigan rolls in there on September 30th? And I'm assuming that one will be in prime time somehow, and Nebraska wins that one.
Michigan, I'd say by a long way. The Colorado game, I get what you're saying, because if you saw a few years ago when Nebraska went to Colorado, it was an ungodly scene. I mean, Nebraska 60-70% of the stadium was red. That was a hot Big 12 rivalry. People love going there here. I love going back to Boulder. It brings all kinds of memories back. But man, come on now, Michigan just in the playoff again. Michigan back-to-back Big Ten titles, helmets, tradition. I mean, Nebraska, when it got in the league, they envisioned games like that, winning games like that, and that sort of win, elevating the program. So Colorado, come on, what was their record last year? They'd lose 11, I think. Michigan, no, hey Billy, Michigan by a long shot.
And you just mentioned it. So you remember when you were a kid and you got that question about where you're going to be in 5 years, or your first job interview, and they said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So I'm going to ask you that as part, where do you see Nebraska in 5 years? You and I have talked about their identity in the Big Ten and how it's different from the Big 12. And there's probably a cross section of Nebraska fans that still wish they were playing Texas and Oklahoma every year. Where do you see this team in the new Big Ten in the next 5 years? Can they take advantage of being kind of the geographical center, so to speak, of the conference?
You got to kill me, Bill, but
I'm sorry.
No, you're going to kill me. I can't do that. I'm not going to do this thing where we've done this a lot around here, where a new coach comes in and the fan base and the media, we start making wild proclamations. We certainly did it with Frost. It's too early. He's Matt Rhule, Billy. Matt Rhule's been here for 2 months.
Right.
I don't know where he's taking this thing.
What about the program? Do you think with USC and UCLA in the conference, is that an advantage for Nebraska in terms of maybe they can try to recruit and push west a little more and get some kids from California? How does that help do you think that helps more than it hurts, maybe kicking off some rivalries with those two?
I think it could help. Rhule's concentrating on Texas more than Nebraska has in a long time. Now he's going to go to the state of Texas. Nebraska, when it was rolling, when we alluded to the Osborne years, they went to California a lot and got players. California was a hotbed for Nebraska. So yeah, they could benefit from that. But what I think, Billy, it's more about, now I've been staunch on this. Nebraska has everything in place. They have a very high level NIL operation. Okay. They can pay. I mean, they're well-heeled, well-organized. They also have a new athletic training facility, a football training facility, basically, right next to the stadium. It's $160 million. It'll be top 5 in the nation. Now, what kind of weight does that carry anymore? Not sure, but it can't hurt. It isn't going to hurt. It's going to be top of the line. So you combine NIL with that amazing training facility, and the fact Nebraska still sells out the stadium. I mean, still it's a fervent fan base. It's a very hungry fan base. There's no reason Nebraska can't get back to being an upper echelon Big Ten team, and then, of course, being a top 10 team. It should happen, but what we've learned here is it's not going to happen if you don't have the right people. And now Matt Rhule has brought in 39 new players, 28 incoming freshmen, junior colleges, and 11 out of the portal, and 39 staff members, all new people. So, I mean, not all new people, but a lot of new people. And is that going to work? I don't know. We'll see. I think the early indications, people are pretty excited, but it's, again, 2 months.
Yeah. So, I was going to talk to you about recruiting and this new group. I mean, he was hired on November 27th. And usually the first class is a transitional class, not very good. You don't have time to get these guys in. Nebraska finished 24th, according to 247, which is excellent. It's up from 41 the year before under Scott Frost, who had been there for a while. I mean, he was obviously on the hot seat, so I'm sure that's what knocked them down. That cycle, Frost was 20th the year before. But were you surprised that Rhule was able to get this transition class pretty solid pretty quickly?
Yeah, I'd say I was surprised, more impressed by the operation. Rhule is a grinder. We've had coaches here that aren't. I mean, grinder has different connotations, but he's a nonstop worker, and he demands a lot of his young staff. He's got a young staff, and they're everywhere. Very aggressive. So, yeah, I guess I was a little surprised, and I think Nebraska fans, guys, I think it's always with a lot of the fans now, it's pretty halting optimism, but there's optimism, and it's a pretty good class. And I look at more of the portal. They went and got some pretty good players in the transfer portal. That guys that got to help. They needed help. They got it at some spots. But where I wonder about still, they didn't go out and get the big boys. They still need help up front on defense. They still need at least one more defensive lineman, if not two, and they could use another offensive lineman or two. And, the portal's going to open again in mid-April. I don't know. Everybody's looking for those guys. Can Nebraska get them? I don't know.
All right, Steve. Bill, you got anything else?
I was going to leave. Who is your favorite reporter to see at Big Ten Media Day every year?
Bill Bender.
He's
the most colorful for sure. The language can be colorful, which I appreciate.
Give me trouble.
You're fine. We're sports writers. You're very professional, and friendly, and knowledgeable.
Well, Steve, I appreciate you coming on. Like I said, one of my good friends in the business. Love coming on your radio show with Jake, and hopefully we do that soon. And you know what? We'll be back in Indy before you know it. So thanks so much for your time. And for our listeners, make sure you read this guy. If you want to know anything about Nebraska, he's the best.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. Both of you guys. It's nice to come on with you. We'll do it again. I'll tell Jake hi, Billy.
I will. Thanks so much.
All right. See you later.